Welcome to Leadership and People. This is a series that pulls back the curtain on leadership by interviewing CEOs, senior executives, and entrepreneurs who've had large exits. We ask these experts about how they built trusted networks to rapidly grow their companies and what advice they wish they knew if they could do it all again. Today on the show, we've got Brian Bowers.
And that inclusion was really amazing to me because, for one, it really endeared me to him and to the team. But also, it showed me that there's a way that you can be inclusive and you can involve people in getting to the best outcomes.
COO of Visible Supply Chain Management. Brian, thanks for making time.
Happy to be here, Jess.
So 1,000 plus employees, $300 million a year company. For people who, what's the 30-second elevator pitch for Visible?
Okay, so Visible Supply Chain Management is the largest shipping company you don't know. So we like to think of ourselves as the back-end Amazon type comprehensive supply chain services company. So we have 4 business units. One is fulfillment, the pick, pack, and ship type operations that we operate out of Salt Lake, Atlanta, and Memphis. We have a logistics arm, which is LTL and truckload freight brokerage. We have a parcel company that supports 20,000 e-commerce shippers through various platforms, including Shopify and Amazon and some of these other platforms. And then a packaging company that supports all of those pieces with corrugate and films and tapes, those kind of things.
That's great. Well, and so you've got a background, from continuous improvement, like Lean Six Sigma stuff at Raytheon and work in private equity, Sorenson Capital and other folks. When you think about just all these different leaders you've observed during your career, who do you feel like you've learned the most from, or what's a story of one of your mentors that really opened your eyes about something in leadership?
I think one of my first experiences that was really significant was at Raytheon. In my first job, I was part of a team of engineers and management working on a program. I was working with a vice president his name was Rick Nelson. He just served as a great mentor in the way that he managed his team. It's the first place that I really saw an executive leader who collaborated really effectively. And Rick invited me, who I was just an entry-level engineer, he invited me to participate in his staff meetings each week. And that inclusion was really amazing to me because, for one, it really endeared me to him and to the team. But also, it showed me that there's a way that you can be inclusive and you can involve people in getting to the best outcomes. And he did that across the board. So he would find ways to include people that would have an influence and participate in the ultimate success that he was shooting for. So, his staff meeting with me was just one way that he was reaching out and collaborating, involving and including people in the projects and the outcomes that he was working on. It was really just an amazing example, one that I didn't forget, mainly because of how much it meant to me at the time.
Yeah, so you're a guy, you've got an MBA from MIT and master's degree in civil engineering. Doesn't it seem like it should be more complicated than something like that? The answer shouldn't be so simple.
Yeah, you would think so, but I think in business it's not uncommon for ego and position and all of these other factors to get into the way. Personality clashes. I think it's a pretty rare but amazing thing when people are able to set those things aside and just work toward the outcome. And that's, I think you see lots of examples of that, but I think maybe it is that simple in the end.
Yeah. So, and were you with, well, you think about an organization like Raytheon, large, a lot of success, but also, that can, grow a lot of bureaucracy, right? Um,
Right.
so this guy that was able to do this kind of inclusion, this leader of yours, um, all those things that you just mentioned, ego and clashes and things that most of us would like to avoid and spend that energy on the customer instead. In your mind, what was it about that inclusion that he apparently got less of that? Or why do you
Are
think
you,
inclusion worked in limiting the ego and the clashes and the opposite?
I think it doesn't leave people with anywhere to retreat. So if you say, hey, let's work together on this, let's collaborate. The person who says, no, I'm not going to, I mean, they're clearly exposed. They're left out on kind of on their own. Once it's couched in those terms, it actually becomes very obvious that if you're not willing to participate, if you're not willing to collaborate, then you'll be left out on your own. Um, then that starts. I don't know. I think that's so obvious to people that they don't opt for the other path once that path's presented to them. So I think that really worked for him and his organization and the results that he was able to achieve because of that. The other option just is so much less attractive, even to the people who are it's being offered to.
Yeah.
It reminds me. It reminds me of this other piece of advice that people give frequently in business, which is, if you're trying to protect your job, most likely you're going to be out of a job. It's those people who actually try to train and work on creating a replacement that's just as capable as themselves. As they go down that process, they grow people that are underneath them, make them more capable, able to take their job, but it also opens up opportunity above you as you take on that philosophy and approach. So it's similar. They're connected concepts.
Yeah, I'd be interested in your thoughts. I mean, I know that you did a lot of continuous improvement, lean, this kind of stuff at Raytheon, and then, after going over to Mighty Light, you guys won entire manufacturing awards there. I'm interested. There's so many leaders who are interested in continuous improvement, and they mandate everybody should be doing this, and then there's 75% of them that don't seem to actually be able to build a culture of it and actually deliver on the promise. I'm interested in, what you learned at Raytheon and kind of what you just been talking about, just your observation of continuous improvement and corporate programs, how it applies in your experience.
Sure. I think let's see. It's a really good question. I think what really works in the continuous improvement environment is to create a clear vision of what you're trying to accomplish first and foremost. And then as you try to help people, usually there's a methodology to support that, right? So in lean, you have a methodology that might step you from, visualizing the results and then committing the resources, kind of championing and sponsoring what's going on, then actually stepping into the Kaizen events and making the improvements, recognizing the achievements, and then going forward with some sort of sustaining activities or identifying the next types of improvements. So regardless of whatever the approach is, DMAIC or Lean or Six Sigma, whatever, you have an approach. You can help people understand the approach, and in some ways that gives them license to start to come forward with their ideas. But leaders who don't listen to those ideas or who aren't earnest in that commitment, then they disenfranchise employees. They lose the hearts and minds of the people, and then that initiative really stalls and it's lost. Another thing that happens in continuous improvement is companies might overcomplicate it. So another great mentor of mine, Don Blom, he really spoke to this by taking down all the banners and getting rid of all the signage and all the things that really were platitudes, but they weren't results focused and they weren't helping the people. And then he really focused things on just a few simple things. He called them the key drivers. And it's the same for all of us. It's the Pareto of items, the few items that get the results, and just maintaining a laser focus on those key drivers. Again, those few items that get the intended outcomes, and getting really good at those things. So I think it really is partly engaging and maintaining the hearts and minds of the people, but then also making the initiative simple enough that you can keep focus on just a few things that get the results, and you stay focused long enough to actually let people gain mastery, gain the capability to deliver on those things, and you get really great outcomes from that. You avoid the flavor of the month kind of programs. You avoid the 31 flavors of continuous improvement kind of problems that you see.
Sure. Well, can you tell us a story? Is there, whether at Mighty Light or any of the businesses of one of those programs that you saw go through and produce, outsized results as a result of that type of an approach?
Yeah, sure. At Mighty Light, our focus was really on reshoring, taking manufacturing back from China. In order to do that, we had to get pretty incredible results in our labor efficiency, in our designs, our manufacturability of products. And so the initiative really started with, here are the key drivers of labor efficiency and quality and delivering on time. And from that, then they rolled out multiple projects, some of it around putting some capital equipment in that was more capable, creating systems and techniques for making the products that we were making in a much more efficient way. Some of that automation, some of that just process improvement. So focusing on those three key drivers helped us to reduce our labor costs by 4 to 5% of sales, which was a massive improvement. Productivity improved by 100%. And it was just, then from there, it was a refinement. How do we get to where the people, how do we create labor plans that change and fluctuate as our volume of orders change and as our products change over time? Again, then it became an iterative, truly continuous improvement approach where we were refining on the smaller and smaller things that affected our labor output. So at first it was the big things, and as those big items started to produce results, then we refined and focused. But we stayed focused on those same key drivers for several years. By the end of 2 years, we had probably achieved, I would say, 75% of the results. And then over the next 2 years after that was a refinement further. So it's not. Yeah,
can you give an example of what one of those drivers would be?
Of the key drivers?
Yeah.
So of particular, the key driver metric that we used was just a labor productivity metric, which was how many units did you produce per labor hour or man hour that went into the product. And so again, so that's the high level metric. And then the specifics around that, we were making commercial tables and chairs. In the table manufacturing, that involved putting in equipment that was more capable, that could achieve faster cycle times. And then individuals who were working those pieces of equipment, learning better processes, actually doing lean manufacturing where we were eliminating steps, simplifying processes until their job was much easier to do. So one story around that is as we came out of the recession, which was really horrible for Mighty Light in terms of reduced sales. We made a lot of adjustments in that time period. But one thing that we did through that period was all of this continuous improvement effort. One of the employees, one of the team leaders, after all that, I guess all those changes, I was standing out there with him and said, Moses, what do you think about what's happened here? And he says, I can't believe it. It's absolutely amazing. We are doing almost twice as many tables per day with the same employees, and we're not running. It's not crazy. So we took a scenario and a setting that was pretty chaotic when we started, and people were running around, disorganized, and really at the end of that effort, really were able to get the output that we needed with considerably much less work, and it was actually phenomenal. It was so fun.
So I think 100% productivity growth is something that perks up the ears of every leader listening to something like this, right?
Yeah.
Now, not everybody's in manufacturing, so I'm interested as you think about principles that could be applied to the rest of our businesses from that.
Okay.
And maybe let's start with inclusion. Any leader can say, I demand you guys produce more, and they may or may not get it, right? But it sounds like Moses was obviously involved in those decisions. It sounds like there was inclusion and everybody got to bring their brain to work. It wasn't just the boss saying, and here's how you're going to do it. Is that a fair assumption there?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think if I were to generalize some of those things, I think there's a proper level of activity to be involved in by each of the levels in the organization. So I think about a company where they want to see improvement, they demand improvement, but the method that they generally employ, I would say most companies employ, is work harder, stay longer, do more, get more output by grinding harder.
Mm.
And that's the beauty of a true improvement process, is that you're eliminating steps that don't matter. You're actually helping align the organization to things that are of value, and you're really focusing on the value added pieces that an employee can deliver, and you're getting rid of everything else. And so again, the real impact there is that an employee like Moses can say, hey, I'm not having to sprint, and we're not having to work 70-hour weeks to get the output out like we were before.
Yeah, he wants those kind of improvements, right?
Yeah, absolutely, right? And at the same time, because of the savings, then the company was able to provide more in terms of bonuses and compensation that way. So their wages went up by about 20% in that period, and then their bonus basically quadrupled from what they were receiving before. So there was a financial reward for the employees to be involved that was contingent on the results. So it wasn't just, hey, if you participate in this change, you'll get more money. It was literally, as we make these improvements, the company has more to offer, and it's a tribute to leadership of Mighty Light at the time that they made those decisions to actually create programs and incentives that really help the individuals. So definitely, there were ideas flowing at all levels, but I think that's less of the story. I think it's more a story about management creating focus, and management, really helping everyone in the organization understand what was valuable, what was important, and then, really focusing in and achieving those results.
I love it. Well, we're about out of time for the first episode here. I want to hear a lot more about how these skills translated in the next company since then. Maybe to close, what's a piece of advice that you wish you could go back and give a younger version of yourself?
Mm. Yeah, I think actually, while it's kind of specific, I well, so I think a piece of advice I would give myself, something that I heard when I was younger, even as a youth, there were lots of people who would say, you will be a leader when you grow up. You will. It seems like everyone in the, I'm going to call it quote unquote older generation, looks to the younger generations and tells them, hey, you will take our place someday. You will be the ones doing this job or this work or making things happen in our companies and in our communities and those kind of things. And I think going back, it's one thing to hear those words. It's another to prepare yourself in a way that where you actually believe them and you prepare yourself accordingly. So I feel a little bit like that. Like I think good advice to myself would have been to take that more seriously and to approach something. This is where I'm specifically speaking. Approach something like MBA school as an actual platform for doing what you want to do. I saw a couple examples of that when I was at MIT, of people who were very clear about their objectives of coming out of MBA school, doing exactly the things that they wanted to do and making the contributions that they wanted to make. But that happened because they went into MBA school with a clear view of what they were trying to accomplish. And it was a recognition that they were going to be leaders in the businesses that they were part of and in the fields that they were seeking to be part of. And there's one particular example of a classmate who said, I want to be a product manager at Microsoft and I want to be a vice president of Microsoft down the road. And everything that he did at MBA school was focused around that objective. Everything that he did, every class paper that he did, every research piece that he did was focused around achieving that goal and becoming that leader that ultimately that he has become. And it's awesome. It's magic when you put preparation together with opportunity, and that's exactly the kinds of things that I think I partially did when I was younger, but I've seen lots of examples of people who did that well, and I wish I would have done that a little better.
Love it. Okay, everybody, please tune back in for our next episode. We're going to keep asking Brian for some more wisdom here. Thanks, Brian.
Hi, my name is Logan Wilkes and I'm the CEO of Corporate Alliance. A few years ago, I moved to San Diego to build a new market for us there. The biggest deterrent I had to success was I didn't know a soul. I often thought to myself, if I just had a thriving network or influence, this would go 100 times faster. To be honest with you, I had never felt so alone in my life because A, I didn't have an influence, and B, I didn't know anyone that was going through the same thing that I was. If you have ever felt like this and you are looking to grow your influence, join us at one of our upcoming events. You can check us out at corporatealliance.net and request an invite to one of our upcoming experiences.